I'm Vicki Hogarth, and welcome to a special mental health awareness episode of Southwest Magazine. I'm joined today by Matthew Dickson. Thank you for being here again today, Matthew.
Thanks for having me on.
Last time you were here, you talked about your own experience and life with schizophrenia, and it touched a nerve for a lot of people. Just how open and honest you are about your own mental health journey and your willingness to be an advocate in the face of schizophrenia and demystify things for people, and also be someone that people can reach out to if they're either have a family member or going through similar things that you experience. So it's nice to have you back to do another mental health awareness update. But for people who maybe missed that first episode, I'd love to have you recap your experiences once again.
Sure, yeah. So I grew up here in St. Andrews and went off to university not feeling the best. That was the early 90s, and I didn't know about mental illness back then. I'd been taught mental health and knew about psychology, of course, but didn't know about depression or anxiety in the clinical sense, or schizophrenia or OCD. And so I had some symptoms creeping up through university. But at the end of university, the disease hit really hard, and I voluntarily went to get help, and because I was having suicidal thoughts, and I thought that's not good, so I went to get help. Through university, the symptoms were mild. I was getting mostly A's in engineering. I bicycled across Canada in the middle of university. I was on the university rowing team. But I just wasn't feeling the best. So the disease, in a matter of weeks, I went from muddling through life a bit to just flat on my back, incapacitated, not knowing what was going to happen to me. And it's really, really scary to be in that state. And I hope I never have to go back to that place again. It took a long time to get better. I've talked to a schizophrenia advocate in Saskatchewan who's in her mid-20s. She's got schizophrenia, and she's doing really well in her mid-20s. Like, she was doing things in her mid-20s, or is doing, that I was not doing in my mid-20s. I spent a year in and out of the hospital, the psych ward in Fredericton, and then after that I was in a group home for 3 years. And since then I've been living on my own. I got a job doing data entry in an office in Fredericton for 20 plus years, and I improved steadily, weekly actually. Every single week I noticed an improvement in my health for 27 years. And it was February 11th, 2021 here in St. Andrews. I moved back here 3 years ago, and my symptoms just stopped on that day. And the next year and a half I was sort of in a state of shock, sort of processing. It literally felt like I was just being pummeled, blindsided, just chaos, confused for 27 years. And then just have it stop. It's sort of like a vacuum sort of came across me or something. I've had time to think and reflect, and I have sentences that actually have punctuation at the end of them and aren't run-on sentences. And it's wonderful. I'm really starting to feel the way I used to feel when I was a teenager, and just not worried about life, not stressed. I've got worries, and I'm not perfect. I get stressed and upset, but I'm in the normal range again.
When you were diagnosed with schizophrenia, well, first of all, how long did it take to get the correct diagnosis?
Fairly soon, I'd say a matter of weeks, maybe a couple of months. Psychiatry is the only profession where they don't actually scan or look at the part of the body that's being treated. Some doctors do. Dr. Daniel Amen in the States will scan your brain. He's got clinics in California and New York City. They're quite expensive though, but they mostly just watched my behavior, listened to what I said when I talked to them, and I mean, they were probably taking blood work, but I don't think blood work will tell you much about mental illness. So it was a matter of weeks. And they first diagnosed me as maybe having schizoaffective disorder, which is a combination of schizophrenia and bipolar, but they ruled that out. I don't really know why they gave me that initial diagnosis, but they went with schizophrenia after that. So.
I wanted to have you on, and we're filming this in February, which is in New Brunswick Suicide Prevention Month, and you mentioned that you had suicidal thoughts. Was this something that stayed with you? I know that a lot of us who have mental health issues suicidal thoughts can be something that creeps in either because of stigma, it can be because you don't have a proper diagnosis and aren't being treated properly or aren't treating yourself properly.
Yeah, when I was diagnosed, they said I had to decide, what should I do about this? Should I not fight this and say goodbye to the world, or try to fight this disease? And I opted to fight. I don't know why I came up with that decision. I weighed no pros and cons. It just came like that in a matter of seconds, saying I want to fight this, very soon after getting that diagnosis. And so I wanted to fight. I accepted the fact that things would be bad for a long time. And I kept going down that path. That wasn't to say that I never had suicidal thoughts. For a long time, especially the first year or so, they'd be in my head all the time, just overwhelming. Matthew, just end your life. And I had to fight it, saying, no, I can't, I don't know. There's this real battle in your head of wanting to give up. Your thoughts just overwhelmingly just tell you that. And another small part of you is saying, no, keep going. It's this constant battle all day long of just two voices in your head fighting back and forth. I never heard voices. Some people, 75% of people with schizophrenia have hallucinations. They can meet any of the five senses. I never did. So these voices are just sort of natural, your own self-talk, yeah. Talking
to you. Well, from what people, I guess, would be the way schizophrenia has been stereotyped in the Hollywood narrative, in the media narrative, it wasn't for you that way. You didn't hear voices. Can you tell a little bit about what your experience was and what your symptoms were?
Yeah, so my vision was affected. I never saw anything that wasn't there, but it's, for example, years ago I saw a show on adrenaline junkies. Jet fighter pilots have a test they have to do. It's a video game, essentially, and they keep adding more and more things on the screen that they have to react to. Everyone has a threshold where they say, too much going on, I can't, too much. And if you reach the threshold, you can be a jet fighter pilot. But they have apparently high levels of dopamine in their brain, which is the chemical that I was lacking that they talk about with schizophrenia, as far as we know. And jet fighter pilots, or adrenaline junkies, are often monotone, very calm. They can handle just lots of things going on. And it felt like my dopamine levels were shot. It felt like everything was going on. I could be in a quiet room with nothing going on, like the suicide watch room. There's nothing in it, just a bed. I felt like everything was coming at me a mile a minute, like warp speed in Star Wars, where you're going through, just tons of things going on. And it's not like I felt like things visually were coming at me, but it's just a feeling of too much going on. Someone said, does it feel like you're going to go crazy? And I'm like, yeah, exactly. It feels like you're going to just go crazy, all the time, for years, from severe to mild in me, over years.
Did medication or any kind of treatments help?
So they tried me on the 1960s antipsychotic drugs when I first went in. None of them worked for me. They tried me on each of those for 2 weeks at a time, I think, a week or two. And so they tried me on one that had just come out in 1994, and it worked. I noticed a small improvement after a couple weeks, and I stayed on it. I'm still on it today, and for years I noticed weekly improvements with that. They lasted about 20 or 30 minutes once a week, and it was, weirdly enough, I cannot figure this out, but it was usually on a Wednesday, sometimes Tuesday, sometimes Thursday, and for about 20 or 30 minutes, I just feel a lessening of the pain. I'd have more clarity in my thoughts, and I'd feel sort of not as heavy-hearted, just a bit more lighthearted, just buoyant, just sort of better emotions. And every week they just built on each other. So,
were support groups an option for you? I know being in New Brunswick, obviously it's a smaller population, especially when you're in a rural area, although I know you did live in Fredericton for a long time. Were support groups there or helpful in any kind of way?
There were some. Group sessions never really worked for me in the early days. They may be better for me now if I went to them. I just felt they just kind of depressed me, and I shouldn't say that because everybody's different. Groups can be wonderful for a lot of people. For me, it was just too heavy-hearted for me, and what really worked for me was one-on-one with someone who just listened to me and acknowledge my feelings, and not everyone can do that. I had one therapist, or she was a nurse in the psych ward, who did it beautifully. I don't know how she did it, but for me, I can vent for about 45 minutes to an hour and a half, somewhere in there, and then I'm done. I've got everything out. And she would listen to me, and then she would say, I think you're doing the best you can. Hang in there. That's all she said each time. But she just made me feel so much better. Now, I mean, she didn't take my pain away. I was still in a lot of pain, but it was someone to know that you're not alone. Just really to have someone here to acknowledge the fact that you're going through hell. It really, instead of someone saying, I can't imagine what that's like, I don't really get it, for just someone to hear you on a human level. They don't have to understand exactly what you're going through, because no one can, but just on a human level to know that you're not alone. With a grizzly bear right beside you, it's nice to have someone with you. It's nice. Have you found,
I mean, I know that the online era has its bad sides. I think one of the positive is that anyone who has, myself included, any mental health struggles, you can find groups online when you can't necessarily find them in person, people that you can connect with that have been in your shoes. Have you found that out over time, that there has been resources that may not be in your community, but you've been able to access through this international online community?
I've gone online and seen some things from time to time. I never went searching online until the last 5-10 years or so, really, and that was after I didn't really need groups, I guess you could say, or one-on-one counseling. I got counseling once a week from a counselor for the first 7 years or so of my recovery. So there are groups out there. I encourage people to, for schizophrenia in particular, the New Brunswick Schizophrenia Society, they have, I don't know if they're still doing it, but they were doing a regular Zoom one that people could join. And I encourage people to go on their page. But they are, I think some of the groups in the States actually, they may let you, like the NAMI, I think they may have some groups that you could join even though you're Canadian. I could be wrong in that. Keep searching online for people out there. It's just, there are people meeting about this, so yeah.
So when you said that just recently your symptoms just went away, can you describe how that happened and what you're experiencing now?
The only way, I don't know if it's just pathways that were slowly like hacking a bush through the jungle with a machete, if my neuronal pathways were just slowly being hacked away, being cleared out again, or actually, I mean, not hacked away, but like starting to refire again. I don't know if that was happening, and then they finally just made the final connection, like the final link in the chain or something. But whatever happened, I could feel it, and it was a sense of it was my vision actually was the last thing to come back. It just felt like things weren't moving. I wasn't being bombarded by video or visual or audio stimuli. Just everything was where it should be. Like the desk is there, the chair's there, the birds outside, everything's just where it should be instead of everything coming at me. And it's not like things were coming at me, but it's just a feeling that they were coming at me. And that was the last thing to go. It's like my vision. I could look around and, oh, everything's not moving, sort of thing. And it lasted all day. And it's never gone away. And I get time to just be me again and not have to fight for each moment. I get to just sit here and sort of watch life go by and sort of trying to force my way through each day.
Now, were you ever affected by the stigma surrounding schizophrenia, what people in the world might think a schizophrenic person is? Did that ever affect how you saw yourself or your self-worth?
It was tough. The early years, it wasn't, again, I think it was about 7 years went by, and I heard the stat that people with schizophrenia are no more prone to violence than the rest of the general population. I was like, thank you, I didn't know that, but why didn't anybody tell me that sooner? And it's tough. It's confusing. You're confused anyway to a certain degree, and it just was another layer of confusion. Nobody in St. Andrews here gave me a hard time. In Fredericton, no one gave me a hard time. I was very thankful for that because I was really scared that if someone did, how would I deal with that? You're just very teetering on the edge a lot of the time, and you just keep going. But yeah, it was difficult. I mean, I'm in the works of getting a survey done because I can't find the stat. I don't know what the general population thinks of people with schizophrenia. Do 1% of them think they're violent and going to hurt you? Is it 10%, 50%? I don't know what it is. I can't find it online. And I'm working with New Brunswick Schizophrenia Society and maybe some other societies across Canada to find that stat out and maybe have a survey done, if it doesn't exist, to find it out. So we're working on that, because if people knew, if I knew, if a lot of people thought that or not many, I'd just like to know, because it might make me or people going through the disease less worried about, because when you're sick with it, you think, oh, everybody thinks that way about me, sort of thing. So you just don't dare say boo. Yeah.
Why did you choose to become a face of schizophrenia? I know you're doing a lot of good with what you're doing, but I always wonder, what is that first decision to put yourself out there and say, this is my story and I want other people to hear it? Was it in part for your own recovery and in part for others, or what was your motivation first for doing it?
My dreams were taken from me when the disease hit. My one singular goal was get my life back. And as years went on, I thought, well, maybe if I got better, I could speak at like the high school here in St. Andrews or in Fredericton. I didn't have any big dreams for myself, even though I'd biked across Canada and wanted to do fun stuff like that. But slowly over the years, there wasn't really, I can't remember a certain moment or time, but I guess I always had that desire to like maybe speak at a high school or something locally. But as the years went on, I was reading books on how to do that. That's one thing I could do. I read a lot of books on how to fundraise, public speak, advocacy, make a website, social media, network with people. I was learning about that for years on how to do this, but I couldn't put that into action because I didn't have the mental strength to actually do it. So, but then 2018, I made my website, MindAid, and it went online, and I started doing the work of that. I'm trying to not read as many books and do more actions. So I just know that at my worst, someone saw me walking down the street here in town in 1994, and they said I looked like I was walking through a world of flying glass. And my heart went out to people in war-torn countries who actually have like actual bullets firing at them with mental illness, and untreated mental illness at that. It's or poverty, extreme poverty. The mental health system here needs work, and we are working on it. We are trying to make it better, and there's talk about this. I mean, we're hard on the mental health care system, but I'm also encouraging people to say, well, this is our mental health care system, and hopefully this is something we can be proud of. Years from now, this is something like, look at our great mental health care system. Catherine Hayhoe, she's an environmental advocate, and she says people with the environment can't picture a positive scenario when asked about the future of the environment. They can all picture apocalyptic scenarios, but we can't picture a positive one. I actually have an article on eco-anxiety, and I try to paint a positive picture. But for a positive picture of our mental health care system, try to think about where we'll be years down the road as we keep improving it. It could be something we're proud of, like, look, this is one of the best ones in the world, or many countries have good mental health care systems down the road. We might be able to say that. So it's...
have you, from the public speaking you've done, have you felt that connection with people reaching out to you? Have you felt that the work you've done has made an improvement and an impact in people's lives? For the mental health in developing countries, I'm wanting to have more of an impact, raising more money for that. But I am spreading awareness, and I'm trying not to be too hard on myself, saying, Matthew, just keep going. It's, things will happen. You're helping some people. As far as people reaching out to me with schizophrenia, the last interview we did, I did get some people like on Facebook reaching out to me and whatnot. And I have been doing some talks on Zoom with people with schizophrenia in Newfoundland. And those are some of, when I'm right in the kitchen with a family member of someone with schizophrenia, it just takes me back so many years ago to where I was. And it's, I'm trying to offer hope to people. I know I can't help everybody on the planet. I can't, but I'm trying to help some people. And it really means a lot to me when I can encourage some people to keep fighting.
because it's tough.
What advice would you, if you could go back 30 years and give advice to your younger self, or some hope to your younger self, what would you say?
In the very early stages of schizophrenia, and maybe other mental illness too, it can be very tough, very painful, and you're wondering, how long can I last with this pain? And with treatment, people can often get better. They may not get 100% better right away, but it comes down to a more manageable level. And that's what happened with me with schizophrenia. And it allows you to keep fighting for longer. It's the initial pain can be tough, but it can come down, and it's, yeah.
If Matthew, early 20s Matthew, could see you now, what do you think he would say?
I would say, wow, Matthew, I didn't know you had that in you. I didn't know you could fight for that long and just keep going like that, and keep going.
Mm-hmm. I know that you mentioned before we started filming there might be another goal on the horizon. I don't know if you want to put it on record right now, but here's your chance if you'd like to.
I've been I'll put it on record. I biked across Canada in 1992 when I was 20. I'm 51 now. I did it with a group called Tour de Canada. They go across Canada every summer. There's spaces available on their tour this year, actually. The person who organizes that trip, Bud Jorgensen, he's biked it a number of times. He biked it at the age of 80 a few years ago. And people in their 60s and 70s, when I was on the trip, were doing the trip. So it's not that hard physically. People think it is. It's not the Tour de France. We would be blown away by the people in the Tour de France. But it's, I've done it. It takes 3 months to train. I started training last week for a bike trip. I'm going to the gym for 2 hours of cardio 3 days a week. And I'm wanting to up that as the months go on, but at least do the 2 hours of cardio, because I know that can give a background, a baseline. I've been conflicted about, should I bike across Canada and raise money for Mind Aid for people with mental illness in developing countries, to be a role model for people with schizophrenia? My gosh, someone with schizophrenia is biking across Canada? Really? Because we don't have many role models who've sort of done more outlandish things. And so I don't know if I could have a bigger impact by staying at home and public speaking, or traveling and public speaking. I don't know. I know that I've been wanting to do that trip for 30 years again, and I'm starting to make headway this year into doing that. Every February I get Wanderlust and make plans to head out west. I love traveling, and I know this is February and it could just be me with Wanderlust, but last year I actually made it as far as Peterborough in my car, giving some talks on mental health. And that was a massive step for me to be able to get that far, because people are probably thinking, Matthew, you're talking about biking across Canada again? But anyway, so I've started that in the last few days, starting to make some calls about that. So. Oh,
that's wonderful. That's great. And I don't think I know. I love people that put their face to something, especially when the stories aren't told that often, that you can't always connect an actual person to something like schizophrenia. So I think that actually would be great. I don't think a lot of people know that many faces with schizophrenia.
No, we don't. It's you look online, or for all the people, celebrities, mm-hmm. people in the news who've got schizophrenia, they're not many. Mm-hmm. And if I can be one, because I didn't have a role model when I first got sick. I knew nobody who'd gotten through schizophrenia and come out the other side. Nobody, not one. I actually wrote that in a journal one day. I know nobody, and I'm kind of that person for myself now. So, but if I could go biking again and raise money, yeah, I'm working on that. So,
what do you hope, finally, sharing your story does, putting your face to it, and truly, Matthew, you're one of the only people I know who really puts it out there to the world with schizophrenia and shares so openly. So I appreciate it, because it's illuminating for me. But what do you hope, being you and being so open about your life and experiences, does for other people in the future?
I don't know. There is a TikToker, Cody Green, who's got schizophrenia. He's in the States. There's a TikToker in northern New Brunswick, actually, who does artwork. He's got schizophrenia. Lauren Kennedy, she's an Alberta YouTuber. She's got schizophrenia. And so there's 3 people who are a face for the illness. And there are some others too. You may not have heard of them though. I don't know what I'd offer hope, I guess. That's something I can do. I don't know. It's, I guess I'm my own role model now. I got through it, and I can at least be that role model for myself. And I know some people might not find any inspiration from me, but I'm hoping that I can give inspiration to some people, because it's, I'm trying.
Well, thank you so much for sitting down with me today and being a part of this special mental health awareness episode. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
My guest today has been Matthew Dickson. I'm Vicki Hogarth. Thank you for watching Southwest Magazine.
Southwest Magazine is a news and public affairs production of CHCO Television.